The West Virginia Mountaineers will host the Baylor Bears at Hope Coliseum on Saturday afternoon in Morgantown, looking to extend that home winning streak and looking to get to 15-7 overall and 6-3. Don't look now, but they got a chance to be 6-3 in Big 12 conference play. We're going to have you covered here in this game preview between the Mountaineers and the Baylor Bears. This is the Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. From pregame to postgame coverage and breaking news, we've got you covered. Let's go. Welcome in, everybody, to episode 138 of Mountaineer Moment. I am your host. My name's Troy, and this is your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. And this, again, episode 138. Unbelievable. Been at this thing for just at 5 months. And 138 episodes in. Super thankful to be that many episodes in and have as many views and subscribers that we got. But we want some more, so hit that subscribe button for us, whatever platform, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. Join the Mountaineer Moment community, this growing community, fast-growing community, and we'll have you covered with all things West Virginia football and basketball. If you are new here, this is not a rare episode. This is kind of what we do. We preview the action between the West Virginia and every opponent on their schedule all throughout the season, not just Big 12 play, but all throughout the season. And this one is the Baylor Bears coming to Morgantown. And what we like to do, this one might be a little bit different, a little less numbers, a little more like strategy for West Virginia and how they can extend that home winning streak. But we'll give you information on Baylor, how they got here, who they are. Some numbers to know for this team that stick out, and then some players on this roster that stick out to keep an eye on as they make this trip to Morgantown. So this is the Baylor preview, and then toward the end of the episode, we'll give you some keys to victory for West Virginia, and then, of course, be sure to join us post-game with live reaction. Well, not live, but, instant reaction and analysis after the game. And we'll have that episode up shortly after the game. That'll be episode 139. But this is episode 138, a Baylor Bears preview. So let's talk about this Baylor Bears team and how they got to where they're at right now. They currently sit at 11-9 on the season, and they are tied for last in the Big 12, sitting at 1-7. Can you imagine? The Baylor Bears at 1-7. I mean, they've been a national power some of these years recently. Just not the case this year. Overall, like you knew about Baylor coming into the season, it was a similar story in the sense to West Virginia that it was like a whole new roster, a whole new looking squad. Which to me, I'm just thinking of this moment. That gives me more hope or confidence, whatever word you want to use for what Ross Hodge has been able to do in year one. We're 5-3 in the conference play. We're 14-7, and they got a shot. It's gonna, they got their work cut out for them, but they're approaching the NCAA tournament bubble for March Madness coming up in a month and a half. So they're nearing that mark, but there's some work to be done, and we're not gonna jump out and declare them in yet because they got a lot of work to do. But Baylor, they're 1-7 in the Big 12, and they got some talent on this team as we're going to look at. They brought in some really, highly touted freshmen that we're going to talk about, and they're struggling. They started the season 4-0. Their first loss came at the hands of St. John's, 96-81. Also in non-conference, just a few non-conference games to mention as far as how they got to where they're at, and then we'll talk more in depth about the Big 12. But they lost to Memphis as well, 78-71, and again, that's it, right? Because they're 1-7 in Big 12 play, and they're 11-9 overall. Therefore, they have two non-conference losses, St. John's and Memphis. They didn't really beat anyone notable in conference play, right? When you kind of think, or in non-conference, to me, at least, you think of Baylor, maybe not like playing the non-conference teams that Kansas does, but you think they'd have a more impressive non-conference schedule, but they really didn't, and that might be, partly due to they could see it, that what was coming, as far as it was a whole, new-looking roster. They did beat Washington by 9. They beat Creighton by 7. They played San Diego State too, but they're, So the only ranked team in the non-conference slate that they played was St. John's, and they lost that one, and then also lost to Memphis. But there weren't any, major blockbuster blue blood teams that they played. Again, Washington they beat, Creighton they beat, San Diego State they beat, and then beat up on some other bad teams. And they scored a lot of points. This is kind of getting ahead of ourselves to one of those numbers we're going to talk about as far as their scoring production. But they put up, I'll just tell you some numbers that they put up. This was their scoring output: 96, 94, 91, 110, 97, 113, 111, 124 in the non-conference. Now, a couple of those are against really, really, really lesser opponents, but you put up 100 and 110 plus on any team in a 40-minute college basketball game. That's explosive offense. But then what happened, right? Because they enter conference play with just 2 losses. They were, 10-2. And then what happened? Well, here's what happened in conference play. They met TCU on the road, lost by 6. They hosted back-to-back. They hosted Iowa State and Houston. Iowa State, they lost just by 10, and then Houston blew them out by 22. They held them to just 55 points in that one, lowest on the season for them. And then they got their lone win against Oklahoma State, 94-79 on the road. So they haven't even won a game at home in Big 12 play, which is, again, Baylor Bears. They're a tough team to beat at home. Not this year. They lost to Kansas by 18, lost to Texas Tech by 19, and then their last 2 games to get to where they're at right now over the last week, 1-7 in conference play. They lost to TCU at home by 7, and then lost to Cincinnati, right, as seems to be the theme. Teams that are coming over to Morgantown, they're playing at Cincinnati during the week as they make the trip over to the East Coast, and then playing in Morgantown on Saturday. We saw that same thing with Colorado, who Mountaineers beat at home, obviously. But Cincinnati, they lost that game 67-57. They're coming off that one on Wednesday night, again, before coming over to Morgantown. Which is coupled with the game against Houston, where they were held to 55, I think I said. Those are 2 outliers on the season for them scoring-wise. They shot at just 35% from the floor, which, as we're going to talk about in a moment, is not characteristic for them. Very uncharacteristic. Just 6 of 26 from 3 and only got to the line 9 times and made 5 of them. But held to 57 points by a Cincinnati Bearcats team that's 3-5 in conference play and a team that West Virginia beat. So obviously, it's Big 12 play. Several mutual opponents to the Mountaineers, who also lost to Iowa State and Houston. But they did beat Kansas and Cincinnati. So West Virginia 5-3, looking to get to 6-3, looking to defend home court against these Baylor Bears. So what are some numbers to know for this Baylor team as they come into Hope Coliseum on Saturday afternoon, the last day of January, the 31st. So first number I'm going to throw at you is 85.1. Mentioned it a moment ago. It's a little inflated because of some of those teams they played in the non-conference, but still, they're top 5 in offensive scoring and efficiency in the Big 12. 85.1 points per game, which puts them 5th in the conference, and field goal percentage 48.2, which is 4th in the Big 12. They're also a top 3 rebounding team in the conference, just south of 40 rebounds per game for this Baylor Bears team. So, kind of similar in a way, if you remember, if you were here for that preview that we had of Kansas State. We talked about Kansas State coming into that game in Morgantown on Tuesday, that their problem, if you could put it on just one side of the ball, their problem coming in, because they've struggled, their problem coming in wasn't found on the offensive side of things. Kansas State's averaging almost 83 points per game. Now, you watch that ugly game that they had against West Virginia, and you see it end 59-54. By the way, that's Kansas State's lowest scoring output on the season. 59-54, West Virginia wins, and you would think, well, their problem was offense and not defense. And so will we see the same kind of situation with Baylor? Because with Kansas State, we said, all right, well, you might be able to score on this team, but, there might be a challenge to stop them. Now, they had some injuries. They had, a short bench. I get all that. But kind of a twist on what you were thinking coming in. Not that we were thinking Mountaineers are going to win a game in the 80s, right? We get that too. But just based on what Kansas State was, that was not a game typical for them. Now, Baylor averaging what they're averaging on the season, just over 85 points per game, a couple inflated by, 100-point performances against inferior opponents. But they can score the basketball. They're not a particularly great three-point shooting team, second half of the Big 12 in that department, but they do shoot it well. They get a lot of offensive rebounds, which is a concern, right? Houston's averaging, here's another number for you. Houston's averaging 13.6 offensive rebounds. That's a big number for them on the glass. Baylor's just south, 13.4 offensive rebounds for this Baylor team. So super important for West Virginia to get on the boards. We'll talk about that later in keys to the victory for West Virginia. But Baylor, offensively, again, said it with Kansas State, offensively doesn't seem to be the problem. Now, defensively, they're about a middle-of-the-pack team as far as what they're giving up points per game-wise, with 76.5 points per game that they're allowing. They're not allowing teams to shoot particularly well from three, but they are allowing a lot of offensive rebounds too, 11.9 offensive rebounds, which is second in the Big 12. So they get a lot of offensive boards, but they give up a lot of offensive boards. So there will be opportunities for this Mountaineer team to crash the glass on offense, but very important for them to do it on defense too, to keep this team from getting second chance points and allow that confidence for them to grow. Because I think you and me both, if we're sitting here as Mountaineer fans, we don't want a game like we just had on Tuesday night, because we were pretty fortunate to get out of there with a win. You start in the game, first 6 minutes nearly, you don't score. And then you have a 7-minute stretch in the second half where you didn't score. And you won the game. Mountaineers the second half didn't score from the 10.5-minute mark to 3.5-minute mark on Tuesday night against Kansas State. And they entered that time frame, I believe, up 4. And then they exited that time frame when they finally scored again. Right before they finally scored, they were down by 4. So only an 8-point swing that Kansas State had in 7 minutes. Credit to the West Virginia defense for that. But that is not what we want to go into this. We want to experience in this Baylor game, right? Where it's like, oh my goodness, this team went ice cold. Because there's a good chance you're not going to hold a team like you did against Kansas State, like you're going to hold them to the same level that you did with this Baylor game, where you can afford to have 2 significant scoring droughts and it not really affect you that much. I don't want to test that theory, right? I want to score consistently, not have a graphic flash up on the screen that says you're in the middle of a scoring drought. West Virginia needs to score the basketball against this Baylor team, and there will be opportunities, right? Because if we're sitting here talking about a Baylor team that's 1-7 in Big 12 play, and their offense doesn't seem to be that bad, do the math, right? The defense, there are some struggles, and so there's obviously opportunities that you're going to have against this Baylor team, right? Just in Big 12 play alone, they've lost 4 straight. They've given up 80, 92, and 97 in that shootout against TCU. But, this game against Cincinnati was different. 67-57, a rare occurrence for them. I have to imagine that's the lowest combined point total that they've had this season. And now they're coming into Morgantown against a team that just had a 59-54 game. So will it be back-to-back games for that style for Baylor? We'll just have to wait and see. But the 3 games before that, 3 losses, they gave up a lot of points. A lot of points, right? Let that be 3 numbers for you in this section before we close it out. 80, 92, 97. The 3 losses that Baylor had prior to losing to Cincinnati by 10. All right, so that closes out that. We're going to talk about some players to know here for this Baylor Bears team that, again, similar to West Virginia, had to rebuild, retool, go get guys from the portal, and they did just that. And I think they entered the season with a little more confidence than what they're showing with an 11-9, 1-7 record. But their leading scorer is Cameron Carr, a guard. averaging 19.5 points. The sophomore, who's a transfer from Tennessee, who obviously has just elevated his game tremendously. Didn't see a lot of playing time the previous 2 seasons at Tennessee, and I'm starting to think maybe he should have, because he averaged just, 2-3 points a game over the course of 18 games played in 2 years with the Volunteers. And now he's at 19.6 points per game as a Baylor Bear, shooting at 40% from 3 on over 5 attempts per game. So he is a driving force for them. But again, a team that scores the ball a lot. They got a lot of guys in double figures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in double figures, and 1 guy averaging 9. Freshman Tunde Yesufu is averaging 17.5 points per game, 6 rebounds. Obi Ajim, transfer from Wyoming, who's averaged 17 points there. He's averaging 10, nearly 11 points here. With Baylor, Dan Skillings Jr. averaging 10, Isaac Williams the 4th. A guard-heavy team are the Baylor Bears, so I don't know how they get so many offensive rebounds, but their top 6 scorers are listed as guards, and then Caden Powell is the center, averaging 6.5 points and 7.5 rebounds, and he's a transfer from Rice, who is averaging 10 points and 7 rebounds with Rice last season. So a lot of transfers, talented freshmen, and that's some players to keep an eye on. And again, they don't shoot a ton of threes, but obviously Carr's capable shooter. Jim, the transfer from Wyoming, is shooting it at 39% on the season. Isaac Williams is only shooting it 1.5 3-pointers a game, but over 50% for him. He's averaging 10 points a game. The transfer from Texas A&M Corpus Christi. So keep an eye on him too, and these shooters that they have. So, West Virginia. I mean, the one good thing, right? If you watch Ross Hodge post game, I don't know if it's post game or I just saw a quote, but he mentioned that that was like his favorite game, his favorite win of the season. Because it was a rock fight, and it was ugly, and West Virginia prefers games in the 50s versus the 80s. So, we'll see. I mean, how much can you contain this Baylor offense? Obviously, some of their previous games, like that one against TCU, what was it, 97-90? West Virginia's not going to play a game like that, right? You can put a lot of money on the fact that that's not going to be what this game's going to result in unless it goes 3 overtimes. West Virginia's more comfortable 50s and 60s. But they've also been susceptible, as we've seen, through the non-conference and in their Big 12 losses, to giving up some 40-point halves. And Baylor's used to averaging over 40 a half. So what can you do to keep Baylor closer to that 30-point mark in each half versus letting them get over 40? So just something to watch for there. Now we'll get into keys to victory for West Virginia, because this is an important game. We knew coming out of the Arizona trip where you beat Arizona State, you get a road win in Big 12 play, you get blasted by Arizona last Saturday. We knew that coming home you had 2 opportunities to beat a team that's beat them while they're down, to beat teams that are struggling in the conference, right? Kansas State is 1-7 now because you beat them. Baylor is 1-7. Right? These are the bottom of the barrel in the Big 12, and you get them both at home in the same week. Important to win. And like I said, even pregame Kansas State, Baylor's got some talent. Kansas State had some talent. And the sky isn't falling if you lose to one of these teams, but the sky might be falling because of the position that you've put yourself in. Right, West Virginia, I've said it here. I don't know if anybody else is saying it that you're listening to or watching, but West Virginia did themselves 0 favors in the non-conference play. Had opportunities against Clemson, Xavier, Ohio State, Wake Forest to get some sort of win, and you just didn't. And that is not helping your case right now as you try to build a resume. And so while it might seem catastrophic if West Virginia drops one of these games at home, and it might be catastrophic, it's not for the sole fact that they lost a game at home. It's because they put themselves in a position where they couldn't lose a game at home. Does that make sense, right? Like, that's kind of where West Virginia is at right now. And, yeah, you should win this game, right? Beat them while they're down. They're 1-7, make them 1-8, send them home, and then you're hitting the road to play against a Cincinnati team that you already beat. And then you got Texas Tech next Sunday at home. So there's a lot here. There's a lot of weight, a lot of pressure on this game. And again, there's pressure to perform because of the situation that you find yourself in. You're trying to approach that bubble, and a loss to a 1-7 Baylor team at home is not going to bode well for you on Selection Sunday. So this is a game you need to win. You need to win it. Simple as that. And yeah, keep taking care of business at home. But again, even I said it, since West Virginia joined the Big 12, they haven't had an undefeated season at home in the Big 12. They're bound to lose a game at home. It's just reality. Don't make it this one. and I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong, right? They got Baylor, Texas Tech, Utah. Texas Tech's going to be a tough one. Utah, BYU, and UCF at home. So there's a lot of ball left, right? 10 games left. And yeah, take care of the ones that you can take care of and should take care of, and that's Baylor. So a couple keys for that one. I mentioned one already. I do think it's important. Offensive rebounding for yourself and keeping Baylor off the offensive rebounding glass is important for West Virginia in this game, 100%. Don't allow them so many second chance opportunities, and because that's where you've seen in the past where teams are creeping up to 40-point halves because you're allowing them so many second chance opportunities. So limit that. I do think Honor Huff is key. We mentioned him key in Kansas State, and West Virginia was struggling immensely offensively in the first half. Then Honor Huff makes 3 after 3 after 3, and then it opens up so many other things. Chance Moore got involved. DJ Thomas made a free throw jumper, because the eyes were on Honor Huff. He's got that kind of gravity where he makes one, you're fixed on him, and it opens up so many other things for this team. So him and Eagle staff, right, if you get them going together, clicking, same game, watch out, right? And we've said that multiple times, but it's so true. So get those guys going. I do think, with Baylor being so guard heavy, Harlan Obioha, right? It seems like he either has a double-double or he goes for 2 points, 3 rebounds in 17 minutes. There's some inconsistency there. How nice would it be for Harlan Obioha to have a double-double in this game, right? He had a double-double against Kansas, and we beat them by 11 behind a big second half where we scored 47 points against the Kansas Jayhawks. Harlan Obioha in 20 minutes had 11 points and 10 rebounds. Since then, for Obioha, since the Kansas game, didn't do much against Houston. Had a good game against Colorado where you won by 11, 10 points, 9 boards. The last 3 games combined against Arizona State, Arizona, and Kansas State, he has a total of 6 rebounds. Right? You got Amir Jenkins and Honor Huff doing the rebounding where your 7-foot big man ain't getting it done. And it's not because of lack of minutes, right? He played 23 minutes against Arizona State, 21 against Arizona, and 17 against Kansas State. But man, it just means a lot more for this team if he's near a double-double versus a 2-point, 2-rebound performance. It's just simple. And I get that you could probably say that for anybody on this team, but Harlan Obioha is an X factor. When he plays well, near double-double, you win. I don't think it's any coincidence. Now, again, anybody, whatever, Arizona is an outlier because you got blasted. Houston's an outlier because you got blasted. Well, actually, all 3 Big 12 losses, you've been blasted, right? Iowa State, too. But you lost to Ohio State. You get that's a month and a half ago, but Obioha didn't do much, right? You lost to Wake Forest. He didn't do much. 5 points, 5 boards, which is not much. Xavier, he didn't do much. Clemson, he didn't do anything. Against Pitt, he had 19 points, and you blasted Pitt, right? So there's a connection to Harlan Obioha playing well and you winning some games. So if he can come out and play well, that would be huge. Last thing that I would say, we already mentioned shooting, and obviously with Honor Huff and Tracy Eagle staff, we're talking about the 3-point ball. But, I think playing at your pace, we've kind of mentioned it as far as with what Baylor liked to score, but against Kansas State, you took them out of their routine and what they like to do. You have another opportunity to do that against an opponent that likes to run and likes to score. Make this your game. That's what you did against Kansas State. The announcer said it, right? You took Kansas State out of their element, out of their comfort zone, and that might have been a contributing factor as to why you could afford to, go on a 7-minute scoring drought in the second half and be fine, because Kansas State wasn't scoring either, because your defense was playing that well and you were running clock on offense, looking for your shot, and they weren't falling, and then they started falling and you won the game. And while I said, right, we don't want it to go that way, but we still want it to be our style. Muck it up, let's have it be a 25 to 21 half time score, and then keep going from there. But I think that's important, because West Virginia, we've seen them lose games when a team it makes sense. A team outscores you. You can't hang. West Virginia cannot hang with teams that are going to score 85-90. Just hasn't happened, and I don't see it happening anytime soon. So keep this your style game, and let's go win this thing. Let's get to 6-3 in conference with 3 road losses to Iowa State, Houston, and Arizona. Not too shabby. Let's keep approaching that bubble, keep winning games, keep taking care of business at home, and let's see what happens. But we'll have you covered here on Mountaineer Moment. Post-game reaction and analysis to the West Virginia Mountaineers and the Baylor Bears. 4 o'clock tip at the Hope Coliseum. We'll see you post-game. Hope you'll join us then. Hit that subscribe button for us, and we'll see you next time.